Welcome to Color Me Conscious. We have more in common than difference. Our intention is to explore the intersectionality that unites us and build consciousness about the layers of oppression we all carry. Color Me Conscious, where consciousness is at the forefront of the discussion about race. Race.
Hello, beautiful listeners.
Hello, and viewers.
Thank you for joining us for this very special live recording.
Yeah, our very first ever this way.
Yes.
We're coming to you in as many mediums as possible now, so just be ready. Okay?
Yes. We are the co-hosts. I'm Myra.
I'm Mylika. Welcome to Color Me Conscious.
Yes, and today we are going to be discussing Blindspotting.
Movie that changed my life.
If you haven't seen Blindspotting, go see it.
If you haven't seen Blindspotting, what are you doing with your life? Get it together. You need to be on this. I've run into so many people who haven't seen it yet, and it surprises me because it's an incredibly powerful movie that was really big, was really large earlier this year,
Right.
especially in our local Bay Area.
Right.
I saw it really late, but that's okay because I have a life. And so
Just because I saw it twice before you doesn't mean that I don't have a life, okay? I resemble that remark.
you resemble it. You resent it?
I was about to revoke your conscious card, but then you decided to come and see the movie, and I'm glad that you got on board.
Right. You could revoke my adulting card because I had so much to do that I couldn't manage to make it. But anyways, we really enjoyed the movie. We went to see it together. It was your second time. It was my first time. I just, in general, loved everything about it. And so we want to discuss a little bit about that movie today.
Yes, absolutely.
So first we're going to do a little overview. The characters in the movie. First of all, it was the screenplay was written by David Diggs and Rafael Casal, and they were the two main characters. David Diggs plays Colin, and Rafael Casal plays Miles, and they have a very interesting relationship.
Best friends.
They are best friends. Have been best friends for a while.
They have something in common with us because they are an
Interracial
interracial friend couple.
They are the male version.
Yes,
Interracial friends.
Yes.
And some of the other characters, Janina Kavankar plays Colin's ex-girlfriend Val and their coworker at the moving company where they work. I believe Val's parents own the company. Jasmine Cephas Jones plays Ashley, who is Miles's partner and mother of his child. Utkarsh Ambedkar plays Rin. He has a brief scene in the film, but it's actually really funny. Ethan Embry plays Officer Molina, who's another very pivotal character in the storyline. You also get to see Tisha,
one of our faves.
Our favorite, Tisha Campbell Martin as Mama Liz, a beauty salon owner and a very fun character for a great scene with Miles and Colin.
Right.
Wayne Knight, who you may know from Seinfeld, plays Patrick, an eccentric artist who has this interesting exchange with Colin and Miles as they're moving some of his photographs out of an art gallery. Then you also get to meet Ziggy Batinger, a young actor who plays Sean, who is Miles and Ashley's son. And he's a totes adorbs, like the cutest little guy you've ever seen. And he's in the film as well. I hope this isn't his first film. I hope it's not his last film because
it has to be. It has to be one of those things where he's just building up from.
Absolutely.
He does a great job.
Yeah.
Great job.
He was
a
really
energy.
Incredibly on point for a child actor. Yeah.
Also helps that he's cute as a button.
His hair, I loved it. Okay. So that's a little bit about the characters.
Right. And then I'd also just like to mention all of the different awards that this movie has been nominated for. It came out earlier this year, and it has been nominated for some prestigious awards such as the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, Director to Watch at Palm Springs International Film Festival, Best Original Song winner for the Nashville Film Festival, That was Anthony Hamilton. And I would like to note, I guess, for the Palm Springs International Film Festival, they did win the Director to Watch, which is Carlos Lopez Estrada. This is his first, his debut as a director, I believe. Additional nominees or nominations include, I don't know how to pronounce it, Deauville Film Festival.
I think it's Deauville.
Deauville. I'm thinking it was French, but apparently it's
Deauville Film Festival. It
Deauville?
was Critics Award winner.
Correct, as well as
Yeah.
was a nominee for the Grand Special Prize.
Yeah.
So Carlos Estrada is killing it. Just putting
Killing
it out
the
there.
game.
Killing it. And lastly, it also did win Festival Directors Award. So Carlos Lopez Estrada won that for the Cinetopia Film Festival earlier this year.
Yeah. So many claps, like a round of applause.
Let's do a round of applause.
A round of
here.
applause. I'm gonna sign language clap. You can't hear it, but I'm sign language clap.
They can see. They can see.
But it's completely deserving of every award it received, every
Yes.
award it was nominated for, and the awards it wasn't nominated for. It should have won those too, because it was life changing, and we love it.
We're about to explain why.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it yet, spoiler alert, we're going to get into it. So avert your eyes and ears if you haven't seen it yet, or go see it and then listen to this episode. So, the plot summary. The plot thickens.
Bum, bum, bum.
So, the film...
Set here in Oakland.
Set here in Oakland.
Right here in the town.
So, Colin, set here in Oakland, Colin must make it through... Oh, sorry. While on probation, a man begins to reevaluate his relationship with his volatile best friend. This is a plot summary as referenced on IMDb, okay? Colin must make it through his final 3 days of probation for a chance at a new beginning. He and his troublemaking childhood best friend Miles work as movers and are forced to watch their old neighborhood become a trendy spot in the rapidly gentrifying Bay Area. When a life-altering event causes Colin to miss his mandatory curfew, the two men struggle to maintain their friendship as the changing social landscape exposes their differences. Lifelong friends David Diggs and Rafael Casal co-wrote and star in this timely and wildly entertaining story about friendship and the intersection of race and class set against the backdrop of Oakland. Bursting with energy, style, and humor, Blindspotting, boldly directed by Carlos Lopez Estrada in his feature film debut, is a provocative hometown love letter that glistens with humanity. Snaps. Major snaps. Thank you, IMDb, for capturing the plot summary so incredibly poignantly. That really just sets the scene, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot going on in this film.
There's a lot of layers. It's a perfect one for us to discuss here on Color Me Conscious, because we're all about looking at the intersectionality, and this film does an excellent job of raising the questions, of demonstrating different layers of intersectionality, and not really providing any answers.
Right. But that's the beauty.
And that's one of the things that I really liked about it, because it's an extremely digestible movie.
Right.
And you can take away from it what you will.
Right.
And the more that you think about the movie and you think about the plot, you think about the characters, the more that you get from it. It's a very, very rich and dense movie.
And living here in the Bay Area, we are seeing and living and feeling all of the things that they're talking about, all of the themes that we'll get into, some of them, but all of those themes, we feel them on a daily basis, living in Oakland, working in San Francisco, existing in the Bay Area, and just understanding that, like, this is our home. And we're watching it change day after day, year after year, as, cities would want to do, as economic expansion is necessary, but how you do it is the question, and who's making those decisions about how a city progresses is a big question for me personally. But I think it's also it's touched on in the film.
Absolutely. And that starts, I think, even just with the opening scene. So from Slate magazine, they're discussing the film, and opening up, it talks about how Oakland is the fastest gentrifying city in the Bay Area, and it tops the list of metropolitan areas where housing is least affordable. The drama Blindspotting opens with basically the opening scene. They have the old Oakland contrasted with the new Oakland.
Yeah.
And so the new Oakland being the gentrified Oakland, there's like, Whole Foods Market.
Yeah. And bulletproof coffee shops. And
exactly. Yeah. Here it is. It's describing, it says, on the left is Oakland of the Black Panthers, Oscar Grant, the 101 Resistance theme murals.
Right.
And on the right is the Whole Foods, just 2 blocks from Lake Merritt. Right. Lake Merritt itself being an intersection of several neighborhoods that are all rapidly gentrifying in Oakland.
Right.
And one of the movie, it has some, I think it gives a voice to the anger of gentrification and what's happening here.
Yeah.
And it's a righteous anger, and
completely justified.
And one of the opening scenes when Collins and Miles are discussing it, Collins is like, I think it's Collins who says, "Look at this. The whole damn city is a for rent sign on it."
The whole thing. I mean, you feel that when you go around. I mean, if you have ever tried to live in Oakland, you see how expensive the rent is.
If you can't get BMR, you can't live here.
For real.
Let's just talk. Let's call
it
what it is.
Market rate.
Below
That's
market rate is it.
Right?
That's it.
And I mean, the good thing is, I guess, that you could try to get below market rate because we're all considered low income, because anyone making less than 6 figures is low income in our area. In San Francisco right now, if you make less than $117,000, you are considered low income.
Wow.
Just pause on that for a second. Just let that sink into you.
Can you give it to us again, Mylika?
In the city and county of San Francisco, if you make less on an annual basis than $117,000, you are considered low income.
Dang.
And that's everybody I know. That's literally everybody I know. So they wonder why there's a mass exodus of people of color from San Francisco, because they cannot afford to live there. They've been priced out. And it's also occurring in Oakland, because Oakland ain't but $20 cheaper rent than San Francisco. So if we're still talking about $4,000 a month, it makes no difference whether I'm in San Francisco or Oakland, because it's incredibly expensive in both places.
Right. And so the opening scene in the movie, it really is just one of many ways that the film addresses the complexities of gentrification and the way that gentrification exacerbates problems amongst the vulnerable communities that already live here.
Right. It's so powerful. I mean, that's one of the superpowers of this film is its imagery.
Yes.
The way that, I mean, as 2 Oakland residents, we were really walking through the streets of our town, the place that we call home. And so I so many snaps, so many applauses for the colors and the imagery and the vivid use of Oakland to be an incredible backdrop for this film.
Absolutely. It's like a love letter to Oakland.
It is. And speaking of love, there is a love story in the film.
Yes.
The love story, I mean, there's more than one, but one I want to talk about really quick is the love story between Val and Colin.
Yes.
So they got history. Years and years of history. Val she works at the front desk of the moving company, and she is Colin's ex-girlfriend.
Right.
And
beautiful woman, might I add. Intelligent.
She is
incredibly intelligent.
She's a student studying for psychology, and
she prioritizes health. She's all about health and wellness.
Yeah. And in all intents and purposes, she actually would be a good influence on Colin if he would just let her.
Right. Indeed.
As we could say for most men, if you would just let that smart and beautiful woman in your life influence you. If you could just,
one, because it is so true.
Get out of your own toxic masculine way, you would see
the value
of a beautiful, smart, intelligent woman influencing your life. So Anyways.
Snaps on that.
Snaps on that. Snaps for Val. I love Val's character.
Yes.
And she's quick with the comeback.
Yes.
And she has zero fucks to give for Miles.
Indeed. She comes with the clapbacks.
She gives no fucks about what Miles has to say about anything. She still has a soft spot for Colin. You can tell it, even though they broke up over some really intense circumstances.
Right.
She still has a soft spot for him, and she wishes the best for him.
And she has every reason to dislike Miles.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say.
Yep.
She has
And
every
Miles
reason
dislikes
to.
her, and it's very palpable hatred between the two of them.
Exactly. I think that she's more justified in disliking Miles than Miles is in disliking her, though.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of their dynamic. The Miles Val dynamic is one that kind of like makes you feel like, dang, there's some beef there. But I also feel like it didn't used to be that way. You know what I mean? Like when Val, I mean, we don't get that piece, but I just get a vibe that like Miles' opinion of Val and Val's opinion of Miles, as we see in the movie, is shifted at certain point, right? Like they all used to be cool because they probably went on double dates. It was Val and Ashley and Colin and Miles. And they were all on double dates, being two best friend couples, just living their life. And then everything changed one day. And Val, being very rooted in reality and being a very practical, logical person, not thinking with her heart, thinking with her mind and her own,
incredibly rational,
right? And her own need for personal safety was like, I actually can't have you people in my life on a personal level. We work together, but it can't go beyond that. She had to set a boundary, and so main snaps for her. The important scene actually that sets the definition of the term blind spotting, which is used as the title of the film. Blind spotting is actually a term that the character Val comes up with. She's studying for a psychological exam, and she is in a very loving way braiding Colin's hair. Because for another reason, he had another set of shenanigans that Miles got Colin into. His hair was taken out and permed and flat ironed. It was flat ironed, not permed. And Colin knew, I can't go to work with flat ironed hair. So he runs back to his ex because she's the only person who can braid his hair in one night. And so as she's braiding his hair, he's helping her study for an exam. And one term that she came up with is called blind spotting. And it's based on a psychological term. It's based on Rubin's vase. And if you've ever done like an exam with a psychologist where they hold up like ink blots and they're like, tell me what you see, you may have seen Rubin's vase. And what happens is in cognitive psychology, generally people looking at an example of a Rubin's vase see either the vase or the faces. The brain seems to make a decision on which one is being viewed, but both cannot be focused on at the same time. So the question becomes like, so she's trying to remember that term of Rubin's vase, and she's trying to remember what it means. And so basically blind spotting is that you can't see two things at the same time. Your brain will only acknowledge one or the other. So in the image, there's whiteness on the outside and blackness on the inside. And if you look at it, one person may see a vase straight out. Another person may see two faces looking at each other.
Right. And one of the interesting kind of what's it called, like nuances of blind spotting is that we're essentially preconditioned to what image we see first. Do we see the face or do we see the vases first? Not only can you not see both at the same time, but it's actually subconscious what you see first. And it would take a lot of brain training to make yourself see something first that you're not you're not intuitively going to see it that way.
Absolutely. And you'd also have to be self-aware enough to acknowledge that which one I see first means something. Right. So like what you see first, if you're a police officer, is way important. What you see first when looking at a particular situation could be very telling for what your blind spot is.
Absolutely. I mean, when you bring up police, for example, then one of the first things I think of is implicit bias with racism and how a lot of studies have been done on implicit bias with the police in particular and whether or not they're quick to misidentify an object as a weapon or to not identify a weapon when somebody's actually holding a weapon,
right. Or
the quickness to shoot when somebody is or isn't holding a weapon.
Yeah. And when they overestimate the age of a person based on their race. It's been proven that police officers will see a black child as older than he actually is, as opposed to a white child of the same age. They'll see
That's tragic.
They'll see
It's tragic.
They'll see a child in a young
Tamir Rice.
Right. But
12 years old.
But 12
years old, but they thought he was what, 16, 18?
And even if he is a teen, he's still a child.
Right.
But still,
right.
nevertheless, childhood is robbed from young black boys and young black girls on a regular basis by the police. And that means something. So what's your blind spot, police? What's your blind spot when it comes to seeing the humanity when it's cloaked in black skin? Mm-hmm. Speaking of police.
Speaking of police, there is an important police character in this movie. So the other scene, the next scene that we wanted to highlight is actually, it's one of the most pivotal scenes in the movie, and I love how the scene opens up actually, because Collins, he's in his last few days of parole. Mm-hmm. He is driving the moving van back to his house because Val has been so considerate to let him go ahead and use the van off hours
as his mode of transportation.
Right. That's his ex holding him down, okay? Holding him down.
For all of the beef and all of the history, Val does hold him down several times throughout this film when she didn't have to, but she's a good person.
Yeah, and she does it for love, because even though she can't be with him, I think that she still does love him.
Yeah, she still wants the best for him, as we often do. Like,
as a human being.
Once you love somebody, even when they do you wrong, even when things change and you go your separate ways, you still have love for that person.
There's no ill will.
Right.
You don't want them to die.
No,
you don't want them to...
No.
You know?
I just don't want to sleep with you anymore.
It's not like I'm hoping you get Ebola. Okay?
Not wishing AIDS on anyone.
No.
Not any one of my exes. I just don't want to be with you.
Exactly. And get it together.
Get it all the way together.
Get it all the way together. That's what Val wants from him. She wants him to get it together. Okay? So at the scene, though, is Collins, he's waiting at a red light, and time is ticking, okay? Because he needs to be back by 11.
At the halfway house.
It's like 10:59, and he is not home. He has not made it to.
He is nowhere near home.
And so he's at threat of violating his parole.
Right.
And he's waiting at this red light, and he is sweating bullets.
Right.
And at the same time, you see this back and forth with him where he's like, come on, just waiting at the light. And I felt like I was just so loving the movie and loving the character in that moment, because it was such a relatable thing. Who has not been sitting at a red light
and no one's coming?
No one's coming. You look left, you look right.
No one's coming.
No one's coming. And I was like, oh, is he about to just go for it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I've been there before where it's like, there's nobody around. Might as
Allegedly.
well do it. Right? And I thought what was going to happen was that he was going to gun the red light. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
But something else much more dramatic happens.
Yeah.
And essentially a police officer is chasing an unarmed black man.
Yeah, and actually, as the light turned green, he starts to go, and a black man runs in front of his car, and they have a brief moment where they make eye contact.
Right, and you see the fear.
Yes,
you see the fear on
that man's face.
Exactly, and it's kind of like Colin absorbs that fear
a little bit. Yep.
And
he can relate to that fear.
He kind of pats the hood of the car and
keeps
jets
running.
left.
Yep.
And so he jets left around the moving truck, and shortly after that you see a white police officer,
Officer Molina
in pursuit, comes around the corner, and from the he doesn't even bother to like turn the corner on and continue to pursue the suspect. What he does instead is gets himself out in the middle of the intersection, has a clear line of shot, shoots and kills.
Shoots to kill. He didn't shoot to stop. He shot to kill. He didn't use his taser.
Yes.
He used his firearm
right.
to stop a suspect from running and ends up killing that suspect.
Right.
And Colin witnessed the whole thing.
And then Officer Molina and Colin make eye contact.
And they know
And they're both frozen. They're absolutely
paralyzed,
frozen,
completely
right?
paralyzed
right?
in that
and
moment.
then what happens is shortly after, I mean, we're talking about in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Here comes another entourage of police officers,
Yes.
and they're banging on the car, telling,
Go.
Colin, get out of here.
Get out of here. You need to go now. And so he finally comes out of his shock, and Colin takes off, and he's panicked. He's stricken. He's completely in shock after witnessing what he just witnessed. And now you have to go home and go to bed and try not to get caught by your parole officer because you're coming home late again.
Exactly.
And
in the last 3 days.
Right.
Last 3 days.
The last 3 days of parole, and this is the last thing that he needs. But this is the situation that he's thrown into, and this is our introduction to Colin as a character, and to the plot of the movie.
Absolutely, because this is a very, very pivotal.
Yeah. It's the crux of the entire plot.
Exactly.
Because Colin feels like, what do I even do with this information?
Exactly, because the next day he's in the store, and he's already several times said to his friends the story. This is what happened.
Yeah.
Right, and then he's explaining to Miles, he's like, what am I gonna do? Call the police and be like, hi, I'd like to report a shooting you did.
I want to call the police on the police.
Right.
Not possible.
Right. Oh, I was out after parole.
Yeah, I was out after curfew and actually violated my
gonna
parole.
He's gonna finish that sentence in San Quentin.
For real.
That's how quick it's gonna take.
You won't even make it, bruh. So you might as well just sit on that. So now he has to swallow the fact that he knows that this happened. He knows that Officer Molina killed a person, and we know what happens a lot of the times.
The audience, yeah.
The audience, we know what happens at the end of that story. Police officer kills an unarmed black suspect, and what's the repercussion? We've seen it time and time again. There is no repercussion.
I mean, even earlier this week, there was the police shooting of let me pull it up. It was here in the Bay.
Okay. So gun violence and police brutality are themes that are brought up again and again. There's another way that gun violence is actually expressed, because at one point in the film, Miles purchases a gun and he takes the gun home, and he has the gun in his house, and he did not inform his partner Ashley that he had a gun in their house. And there was a very powerful scene.
I have to breathe on that one. Had to really breathe on that one. Because he's got a child at home.
Yeah, and Sean actually accidentally comes across the gun and is holding the gun. And while Ashley, Miles, and Colin are having an intense adult conversation, they look over, and Sean is sitting on the floor, cross-legged, holding the gun that Colin brought into the house.
Oh, that scene gave me chills.
It made my stomach turn. It made me so upset, because the interesting thing about gun violence is that our reaction to the gun violence is disparate depending on who's holding the gun.
Right.
There are multiple scenes where someone is holding a gun, and you have a slightly varied visceral reaction to the person holding a gun. So when a police officer is holding a gun and pointing it at an unarmed black suspect, I feel one kind of way. When Miles is holding the gun and Colin is holding the gun with the gun dealer in the Uber, and they're all kind of playing with the guns, they're like, man, why do you have 17 guns in this car, right?
That Uber driver, though,
Uber driver was bananas. So there's that scene, and that one's kind of funny. It's lighthearted, but there's still guns. But then you take it to the scene where Sean is holding the gun, and he doesn't know what danger he's in just by holding it, because he's a child. And the gun could have been loaded. The gun could have been cocked. He could have killed himself. He could have accidentally shot one of the adults in the room. Anything could have happened, and he didn't even realize the danger he was in just by holding that gun. So there's a lot of poignant scenes of gun violence, but the police brutality, did you find it?
Yeah, this is awful. Chinedu Okobi died after being electrocuted by police in San Mateo County. So not here in Oakland, San Mateo Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
Wow. Excuse me. Let's see. So here we go. Families suffering from police violence find themselves in the fog of unspeakable setbacks. Some have lost fathers, mothers, brothers, sons. When I got the call, this is a article by Sean King. He says, when I got the call that Chinedu Okobi had been killed by police from San Mateo County Sheriff's Office in San Francisco Bay Area, it was different. This was my Morehouse brother. You'd almost have to have lived at 830 Westview Drive in Georgia to truly understand how deep the bond we had formed is. He's a Greek fraternity. Student life. He was a student government president while at Morehouse. Let's see. This is a rather personal article about somebody who knew the victim. let's see. I don't know the details. I'm going to try and look up an article of the details because that was earlier this week. Right. ACLU demands sheriff's tasers policy in unarmed black man's Millbrae death. So that was October 19th. And the incident was on October 3rd, in which an unarmed black man suffering a mental breakdown died after officers repeatedly shocked him with tasers.
Right. So it's intense, and he passed away, unfortunately, and so our prayers and our thoughts go out to his family, as they do for every victim of police brutality and unnecessary slayings of any person, let alone people of color, but of any person at the hands of the police is unacceptable, and it needs to stop. So another theme that's really poignant is the theme of toxic masculinity. Right. And it is woven throughout, very intricately throughout this film. There is this interesting scene where Colin is parenting his son Sean, and he's trying to cheer him up a little bit, and he tells him, "Put your arms up like this and make a muscle." And then he says, "Now say, I'm a tough guy." I'm a tough guy. No, say it like you mean it. I'm a tough guy. I'm a tough guy. Right. So that's a little bit of the toxic masculinity being passed from one generation to the next, because what does it mean to be a tough guy?
Right. I mean, on several instances, when Miles is telling his son to be a tough guy, it's about throwing blows and not taking shit from other people.
Yeah, and it's about denying your emotions. It's about masking how you really feel with your toughness, which is the toxicity of masculinity that so many men deal with in America. I mean, as a parent of a little black boy, the last thing I want him to be is a toxic masculine person. That's not what I want from you. I want you to be a feeling, emotional person, but also a strong king in the face of the oppression that the country's trying to throw at you. So I feel for that little boy in that moment, because he's just learning and absorbing things from his father. Right. He doesn't understand the layers of difficulty that will come along with absorbing that piece of his personality.
Well, and I think that excellently weaves into the intersectionality of all of this, because Miles is a white man. Yep. His son is a young biracial black boy, and the way that his son is going to experience the world is different than the way that Miles is going to experience the world. Right. And unfortunately, due to Miles' own blind spots, he is not able to kind of predict the impact of the messages that he's teaching his son.
Absolutely. And the outcomes of giving a young black boy that level of toxic masculinity that Colin has the privilege of displaying out in the world as an adult, those outcomes would be very different for Sean when he is Miles's age.
Right, exactly. So if the son were to act out the same way Miles, his father, was, then it would be a whole different story. And that's one of the main themes that we see actually between Collins and Miles. Yep. Collins is black and Miles is white, and they have this long-standing history. Right. They both are born and raised in Oakland, Oaklanders. Right. And the problem kind of comes into play that Miles is not conscious of his white privilege despite having an economic disadvantage.
Absolutely. There's an intersection here between socioeconomic status and race.
Exactly. And there are so many scenes in the movie that explore this. It's almost hard to choose.
Can't list them all.
We can't list them all. You guys gotta go watch the movie.
Watch that.
You watch the movie and then you let us know the scenes that correlate to this topic, because this is one of the central aspects of the movie.
Yes, definitely.
Because with Miles, and particularly his blind spot to his white privilege, it completely intersects with toxic masculinity in white men's entitlement to rage.
Yes.
Because Miles is rageful.
He's a monster.
Miles is violent.
He is roaming the streets with rage.
Miles is the person that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, more than anything, he's the suspect that they're looking for a lot of the time, because he tramples around the city doing what he wants.
Gung-toting.
Saying what he wants.
Quick to pop off.
At anybody who will threaten him.
Exactly. Right. And you want to insult him. If you insult him by misidentifying him, you're going to end up in the hospital.
Right. And don't challenge him and misidentify him as a hipster just because he's white, when he feels like his identity is, I'm born and bred red Oakland, my dude.
Exactly. That's why he wears the shirt.
Right.
Kill a hipster, save the hood.
And it was a gift from his son, which is adorable. His little baby boy is like, my daddy's so woke. Let me get him this T-shirt. Because I heard him say something like this before. I think my daddy gonna like this
Save
T-shirt.
the hood. We need to save the hood.
Kill a hipster, save the hood. Anti-gentrification motto.
You know what I have to say though? When we're talking about the toxic masculinity and all these layers, this is why I love the movie so much. So we have the scene where Miles is irresponsible. Mm-hmm. He doesn't tell Ashley he's brought a gun into the home.
Right.
What happens? Their son finds the gun, and not only is he sitting on the floor playing with the gun, he's pointing the gun in his face
at his own self and doesn't even realize.
Right under his jaw.
Right.
Like the scariest way for a child to hold a loaded gun.
Yeah, and you could accidentally kill yourself. And
good God, like my heart stopped in those moments.
Absolutely, I was gripping my seat.
Of course, Ashley rightfully kicks Miles the fuck out the house.
You got to go.
You have to go. You need to leave me and my son in safety.
And actually, thank God that Colin was there, because he was the one who ran up to Sean and grabbed the gun and put it in his pocket, because both Ashley and Miles were paralyzed with fear in that moment.
Yes.
Colin was the one to go get the gun from the child and say, whoa,
yes.
Hold on a second. Meanwhile, Colin's the one who told Miles not to buy the gun in the first place.
Right. But when we keep it back to the toxic masculinity aspect, and how you're saying that the how part of toxic masculinity is men not being able to own their emotions, not being able to express their emotions. How crazy is it that, first of all, Miles' only reaction is anger? All right, he has zero accountability for the fact that he's the one who bought the gun.
Right.
He's the one who brought it into the house. He's mad at Colin instead
for not having his back,
lying to Ashley about whose gun it was.
It could have been your gun for a few minutes, bro, and got me off the hook.
And then remember, they're fighting in front of the corner store, and the OGs pass by, and then they stop mid-argument to give dabs.
Yeah, because you can't ignore them, but we're actually having a highly emotionally charged moment here, but I got to pause that so I can give respects to the homies when they walk by.
Right.
Toxic masculinity.
Right. And then when they basically press unpause from that, they decide just fuck it, let's go to a party.
Let's just let it go.
That's gonna resolve everything. Let's go get drunk
that's
with
your
a bunch of
solution.
Strangers.
That's a good solution.
You want to know how that party ended? With Miles smashing somebody's face in and blasting his gun off
into the air.
Irresponsibly, like a maniac,
right? Ridiculous,
like a maniac.
There's another thing that's brought up here in that actual scene when they're at the party. Colin is wearing the T-shirt "Kill a Hipster, Save the Hood," so he's a white person, and they go to the party of
Pandora.
A Pandora executive is having a mixer at his newly renovated flat,
in West Oakland.
In West Oakland, of all places. Yeah. So it's actually funny when you see the house on the street. It's a totally renovated, completely brand new home with dilapidated houses on either side of it. And this is where you're coming to party. So Colin and Miles go to this party. Neither of them really want to be there, but they just want to divert their attention away from what just happened with their, his child holding a gun. And so they get in there. I don't think that Miles even realized he was still wearing that shirt. Like,
no.
He left the house in that shirt unintentionally because it was extra medium. That's not his style.
It was a baby shirt.
It was a baby tee. But they're in this party, and I think that a couple of white people saw the shirt and thought it was cool. They were like, "Hey, cool shirt, man!" But then at one point, Colin and Miles separate. Miles is in the kitchen, and a black person that's at the party goes into the kitchen.
The only black people at the party is Colin and two other people who happen to know each other.
They know each other from the past. And one of the brothers, he goes into the kitchen to get some snacks, and he sees Miles wearing that shirt. And so he gets his snacks, and he goes back to his two black friends, one of whom is Colin, and he's like, "Y'all won't believe what I just saw in the kitchen."
But he said something out of pocket to Miles in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Because he saw Miles, and Miles is very much an Oaklander, like with the vernacular. He has the slang, he has the swag, and he's in the kitchen, and this guy, is observing Miles and taking in the scenery, given the fact that they're in Pandora, headquarters essentially, in gentrification, like home base, and so he says something about you don't have to adopt.
You don't have to try so hard.
You don't have to try so hard.
That's what the black character says to Miles, and Miles is like, "Try so hard."
Right.
I'm not trying.
Right.
This is me, bro.
Right.
This is who I am, son.
Right.
And then, of course, a challenge ensues.
Right.
And so a fight ends up breaking out between those two guys, and Miles goes into his rage again.
He does, and it wasn't until right now when we were talking about it that I thought about this level or this layer of toxic masculinity and how, on some level, Miles, I'm sure, is angry about what happened with the gun and his son and Ashley. And instead of dealing with that, he displaces that anger.
Misdirects it.
Onto the very next person that was possibly, you know, going to fly him into a fit of rage. And that's exactly what happened. But then there's the other layer to it, of course, where we're, again, talking about Miles blind spotting about his white privilege. Because Miles... one of the things in the movie that really stands out is that Miles feels that it's almost like a reverse racism type card, you know, where Miles feels that he's being that his whiteness is being highlighted now that gentrification is occurring in Oakland. And it's almost like it's revoked his Oaklander card. Right,
because in the past, he was maybe one of the minority. There were fewer white people in the neighborhood that he grew up in because of his lower socioeconomic status.
Right.
So he was assimilating into black culture.
He's from the hood, and he's okay that he's just a white dude from the hood.
Right, and he's down. He's a down white man. That's how he's always existed. And so to now watch his city change and to have this influx of white people that have money that are not trying to assimilate to what Oakland is. Instead, they're trying to adjust Oakland into what they want it to be.
Right.
And that enrages him to no end because he has zero power to change or control that.
Right. And he on no level identifies with them.
Right.
And again, that has to do with his blind spots about whiteness and white privilege.
Right.
Because he gets so upset about the idea that somebody mistakes him for a hipster.
Right.
And I just like to think about the whole stereotype bias.
And stereotype threat.
Right. And stereotype threat.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, at worst, people are assuming what, Miles? That you have a job, that you can pay your bills, that you are successful.
That you have money.
You know?
Right.
Like, I get that there's the cultural aspect to it.
But also being a hipster, right? Like, he doesn't want to be that guy.
Right. But I guess when I talk about, like, having your ass on the line, like, it's not a bad thing for somebody to assume that you have money and power and social influence. You have social capital.
And if he was
whether or not people like you as a hipster, you definitely have social capital.
And if he
call the police, they're going to come.
Right. And if he was more savvy, he would just leverage that for his good. If Miles was more savvy, he would just leverage the fact that people look at him and stereotype him as a hipster and use that for his good and use that to benefit the hood that you claim so hard. You claim the hood so hard, and you should use it. There's the stereotype threat is defined as
pull that up. Stereotype threat is a situational predicament in which people are or feel themselves to be at risk of conforming to stereotypes about their social group. Since its introduction in the academic literature, stereotype threat has become one of the most widely studied topics in the field of social psychology.
Right, and there's a disproportionate level of acceptable reaction when the stereotype, which you reject, is pushed upon you. So when,
what do you mean? Say more.
Yeah, so when Miles is stereotyped as a hipster, he is enraged to the point that he goes into a brawl with another person. When he
bashes out some teeth, fires off a gun,
fires off a weapon,
runs off before the police get there.
In front of a party full of people, he just goes the F off. And that is somehow an acceptable level. Like, they're like telling him to get out of here, but he doesn't feel like, get out of where? Get out of this house, get out of this neighborhood, get out of Oakland, get out of where? Like, this is where I'm from, this is where I live. You get out of here, you rich, culturally appropriating, gentrifying people.
Right.
Like, that's how Miles feels in that moment. So I can understand his rage, but it's acceptable for him to go off that way. Disproportionately, when Colin is forced into a stereotype, like being a black man walking down the street minding his own damn business, and yet is still seen as a threat and an aggressor, when the police drive by and Colin tenses up because A, he has the gun that Miles bought on his person, B, he's still on parole, C, it's late at night, and you're black on the streets. So there's a part of Colin that is not allowed to express his disappointment and his anger when he's forced into a stereotype that he rejects.
Right.
He does not fit that stereotype because he is a reformed individual. Right. He has gotten better. Yes, he will wear the title of convict for the rest of his life, but he ain't no ex-con, and that's not how he wants to be seen. He's not a career criminal.
Right, but for the rest of his life, he's going to have to prove that he's not a felon.
Every single day.
Every single day.
So there's a disproportionate level of what's acceptable to react to when you're forced into a stereotype that you reject. When you're white, you're allowed to be completely enraged about it. When you're black, you better just swallow that shit and hope that nobody shoots you.
Right. When you witness the police shooting of an unarmed individual, you better swallow it.
But if you're white and you witness that, you could call the police, even if you were on parole.
Right.
You could call the police and tell them what you just saw. And maybe something would happen. Maybe not. But if you're black, you better just swallow that and hope, because they're going to somehow turn it around on you and blame you as the victim of something that you just happened to witness.
Exactly.
And we know that's how it's going to go down. So
exactly,
it's disproportionate.
I love the point that you made about how Miles could leverage his white privilege if he wasn't blind to it.
Exactly. It would be actually be powerful. It actually like the message coming from a white person to a white person is received differently than when it's coming from a black person to a white person,
right?
Or when it's coming from any other race to a white person. Honestly, the message is different. I mean, it's almost like this. You take the intersection of race and gender. I'm gonna hear something differently coming from a woman, than that same message coming from a man. Yes. So if you try to tell me, girl, you acting out of pocket right now, you need to calm down, I might hear that and receive it a little more quickly than if a man were to come to me and tell me, girl, you doing too much, you need to calm down.
Because the immediate thing is going to be like, oh, is this because I'm being too emotional? Because I'm a woman?
Right. So
there's a lot of triggers that will be brought up depending on who's delivering the message.
And it's easier to hear the message, and it's easier to get to a common place of understanding about what they're trying to say, and to give the person the benefit of the doubt that they have your best interest at heart by telling you something. So this is why I always say racism will not be fought by those that are oppressed. Racism will only be solved by the oppressors. So
that's what we say. We say it's white people's problem.
So white people got to fix
racism.
Yep. I ain't make this shit.
It's my problem. Yeah. It's our problem. We need to fix it.
So every other white person who's listening to this, you need to watch Blindspotting, and then you need to go find another white person and make them watch it, and then y'all need to talk. Y'all talk amongst yourselves, because I can stand in the corner with my fist up. I can stand on the street with my fist up, and it's a very different message than if you stand on the corner or you stand on the street with your fist up.
Indeed.
And even more so, another message when we do it together.
Yes.
So be an ally and find somebody that you can do that with. White people.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes. Another thing that I wanted to discuss when it comes back to, you were talking about how Collins has to essentially swallow a lot of what he witnesses and what he experiences. And I think that the movie does a beautifully artistic job of portraying the trauma that's imparted on Collins as a result of this. There are several scenes throughout the movie where Colin, the only place that he can go find respite in his community and exercise is running through the cemetery. And as he runs through the cemetery, he is seeing these bodies lined up, and representations of people who've been murdered by the police, black men and women throughout the cemetery. There's also another scene where he's having a nightmare we have Officer Molina is the judge, and Miles is his attorney.
Slick talking attorney. And the jury of his peers.
It's all black people who are chained.
And shackled.
And they're shackled. And when he's asked to speak on his own behalf, he just starts vomiting bullets.
He's not able to speak, and it's incredibly powerful.
It's an incredibly powerful scene, and I love the artistry that's involved. I feel like it evokes so much emotion. Watching it, it's so much more powerful than somebody just saying. You know.
And another incredible way that they say things without saying things is through the poetry. We see, we get to witness and hear Colin's poetry throughout this movie. And there's a really powerful scene where Colin and Miles are doing a moving job, and they're moving a woman and her son out of their house. They get there, they're almost done. Miles is in the truck. Colin just gets a little nosy, decides to look at some face down pictures. He picks them up and he looks at them, and instantly he realizes he's in the home of Officer Molina.
You mean the one who shot that man in front of his face.
In front of his face. So Colin realizes he's in that man's home, and we get an interesting moment, and we get an interesting intersection of humanity. Colin kind of loses his better judgment for a minute, decides to go see if Officer Molina is home.
And confront him
about what he saw. So he goes down to the basement, and Officer Molina is there. Officer Molina is visibly distraught, crying over the fact that his wife and his child have just moved out. We can only assume that their marriage is dissolved. And in that moment, when Colin comes down the stairs, Officer Molina is instantly threatened, and the first thing he does is reach for his gun.
Yes.
Little did he know, Colin had a gun on him too.
Thanks, Miles. Shout out to Miles and your irresponsibility.
Your irresponsibility actually worked in Colin's favor in that moment. Every other moment it was deterrent, but in that moment.
And the difference between Collins and Miles is that Miles probably would have shot the cop, and Collins did not.
Point blank
Collins
execution
used his
style.
words.
Yeah.
Collins shot him with some knowledge, though.
Colin shot him with incredible knowledge, and actually was interesting. Colin walks towards him
poetry.
with some incredible poetry, and he's holding the gun, and he's pointing it at him, and that's another point where gun violence is brought up in the fact that depending on who's holding the gun, when police officer Molina was holding the gun and pointing it at a black person and shooting that person who was unarmed, I felt one way. But after this incredibly dynamic story unfolds, and Colin is holding the gun and pointing it at that officer, part of me is seeing the officer's humanity and like, oh my God, he just needs to be reformed. Like, the officer is traumatized as well from all the things that have come as an outcome from his actions. Oh my gosh, we need to help him. He needs reform. He needs education. Like, he could be saved. And I have empathy for that man. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, shoot him, Colin. Shoot him. You could shoot him and be justified. This audience would ride for you if you shot him right now. But then he doesn't shoot him.
He doesn't.
He just drops some knowledge bombs on that ass. And I appreciate that so much.
He slayed that guy's ego. He really did.
He did. He made his brain melt.
He did.
And that actually is a little more powerful than just shooting him, because then it just puts Colin right back in jail, and that's not where he needs to be. That's not who he is.
Well, it shows the humanity of Colin, and it shows he's an evolved individual.
Yeah, and the things that happened in the last 3 days of his parole have just accelerated his development to a point where now he is a highly functioning individual.
He might be back on the level to get back with Val, actually.
I mean, as long as he can stop being friends with Miles, she might consider it. So we love this movie, as you could tell. We loved everything about it. I feel like we could talk about it for days.
Yes.
So, I mean, the biggest thing I want to just tell everybody is that if you want to walk in someone else's shoes, like if you're like, for me as a black woman, I don't know what it's like to be white. I'll never know what white privilege is like. I'll never know what it's like to exist in a world where white narratives are the norm. Right. I have this black skin. I wake up with it every day. I can't take it off. I can't maneuver through different situations and be perceived differently. But if you've ever wanted to know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, then you need to watch Blindspotting. And then you need to go home, and you need to look in the mirror, and you need to identify your own blind spots. You need to do some implicit bias association testing, and there are plenty of resources out there on the internet. Just Google it. You can find out how you can identify your own implicit biases, and then how you can begin to address those. And then after that, I want you to educate yourself some more, and I want you to go find another white person or another person of any race, another person of any religion, a friend of yours, and I want you to have them watch Blindspotting, and then I want you to talk amongst yourselves. And I challenge you to do that.
Yes. And then go ahead and comment, send us a message, and let us know what you think.
We want to keep this conversation going, so you can follow us on Instagram at Color Me Conscious Podcast. You can go to our website, www.colormeconsciouspodcast.com. We want to keep this conversation going, and we really love this movie. It's close to my heart.
It is. And I would say definitely as a white person, and you know, there's some real popular terminology right now about like being woke, and I guess, you know, I could say I'm woke-ish. I'm woke-ish.
I will sign off on that.
I'm woke-ish. But even as a woke white person, I would just like to say that I think I'm racist. I think all white people are racist. I think that when you go online, if you take my Lika's challenge and you go and you look into implicit bias, take some tests, look at it, because there are ways that we are conditioned subconsciously into making assumptions, into misperceiving things, into mishearing things, misunderstanding things, personalizing things that have absolutely nothing to do with us.
Right.
And why does it matter as white people that we do this, and why is it more of a focus? Is because of the privilege that we hold and the way that we can socially impact the people around us due to our own social currency.
Absolutely. And the social construct of America is steeped deeply in racism. So if we don't talk about it, it won't be addressed. If we don't acknowledge the problem, it won't be addressed. And so that's why saying I'm racist is not necessarily a negative thing. It's an acknowledgement of the construct that you were born into.
We live in a white supremacist culture,
and
period.
there's
and point blank. That's it. And
yeah.
so as everybody adopts elements of this white supremacist culture,
right.
but as white people, as people who are privileged
benefit
by this,
from it the most.
Then we're the ones who are the most invested in it being right, consciously or subconsciously,
and wanting to maintain
because we're
it.
comfortable.
Exactly.
And that's one of the pillars of white supremacist culture is the entitlement to comfort.
Right. So if you want to challenge the pillars of white supremacy, then you watch this movie, you go educate yourself some more, and then start having some real conversations around your Thanksgiving table, because Thanksgiving's coming up, yo. And I want you to challenge your racist uncle, and I want you to challenge your bigoted auntie when you guys are sitting around the table.
And even before that, when we look in the mirror, let's be very conscious of the Halloween costumes that we're choosing.
Please, if you put on another Native American costume, if you put on blackface, just don't.
Whatever stereotype, whatever, I don't care if you're thinking of you want to be Jasmine Gypsy, you want to be Pocahontas,
right.
You want to do the freaking, oh my God, there's just so many.
There's
so many offensive ones, we can't list them all off. But then if you think should I? The answer is no. If you stop,
think that,
put it down, walk away, walk out the store. Don't even participate in Halloween this year.
Right.
If you had the thought of doing that,
right.
Please just don't dress up at all.
If that's the costume you're gonna go with,
if you know what I want you to do, I want you to put on your normal clothes, and then I want you to wear a sign that says, for Halloween, I am a racist.
Instead of wearing blackface as your costume,
go as yourself.
Go as your racist self. It's the best costume you can have. It's the cheapest one you can buy. So do that.
And if you have any questions on whether or not it is racist, go ahead and drop us a line. Ask us at Color Me Conscious Podcast
at gmail.com. If you want to know whether or not your Halloween costume is racist and you'd like our approval before you put it on, email us, colormeconsciouspodcast at gmail.com.
Or visit us on Instagram.
Yep.
Tag us on Instagram at Color Me Conscious Podcast.
Yeah, I would like to know who is wondering about whether or not their costume is racist.
Is this offensive? Hashtag is this offensive?
Yeah, and we'll let you know. We'll let you know real quick whether or not it's racist, whether or not you should reconsider all of your life choices.
We're on it.
Okay? And so I think that's all the time that we have today.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us.
We love you. We really do.
We do. And we love you for giving us the opportunity to just share all of our thoughts and opinions, because we have so many.
Yeah.
So many more to share.
So many more to share.
So much more. So keep tuning in.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. And if we made you think and you'd like to continue the conversation, visit our website, www.colormeconsciouspodcast.com, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Color Me Conscious Podcast.